Hey, good morning. Let me tell you about the time when the indigenous people of Hawaii killed disease-ridden colonizers who tried to kidnap their king. But first, we've got to set the stage. It's October of 1778, and the indigenous people of Hawaii are celebrating Makahiki, their new year. Now, this takes place when the Makalii, or the Pleiades, rises over the horizon after sunset, which kicks off 4 months of peace, giving people time to rest, relax, play games, sports, dance, and all sorts of festivals. And most importantly, it was a time to honor the god Lono, a god of peace, agriculture, rainfall, and music. So in the middle of Makahiki season, somebody noticed some strange clouds off in the distance back yonder, and they kept looking at them, and these weren't regular clouds because they weren't in the sky, they were sitting on the water, and they kept getting closer and closer, and they couldn't figure out what it was. And the closer it got to the island, they realized, oh, that's a boat, and it got clouds on the top of it. I ain't never seen nothing like that before. So for 8 weeks, this ship with these huge sails and masts that the indigenous people thought were clouds circled the Hawaiian Islands every day for 8 weeks. And they would send emissaries in boats to go meet these people on the ship, bringing them gifts and things and food because it's a celebration, might as well have fun. Then on January 17th, 1779, the ship dropped anchor at Kealakekua Bay, and the indigenous people of Hawaii were formally introduced to Captain James Cook. And those who thought he was the god Lono began to side-eye him a little bit, talking about, how come he don't speak our language? How come he don't know our customs and traditions? Others justified it by saying, he's been gone for a while, so maybe he just forgot. And they was like, okay, cool, but I still got my eye on it. So since it was festival season, a time of peace, they were like, cool, we'll keep the party going. So Captain Cook and his men ate their food, drank their drink, participated in their festivities, and slept with their women. And in exchange, they gave the indigenous people of Hawaii tuberculosis, gonorrhea, and syphilis. See, this is something that these filthy Europeans had been doing consistently since 1492, when they found out that the people of the New World weren't immune to their diseases. And in about 300 years, with just their diseases alone, they killed hundreds of millions of indigenous people around the world. So after a month of partying with the good people of Hawaii, Captain Cook and them got back on their ship, told everybody goodbye, and they went on their way to go find the Northwest Passage. But they ran into some bad weather, broke a mast, and 4 days later, they came back to the island. Now this is after Lono season, so the good people of Hawaii was like, what the hell are you doing here? Why are you here? And Captain Cook was like, well, hey guys, look, we're just here for a little bit. We need to fix our ship, get some supplies, and then we'll be on our way. Why don't you give us some of that wood you got sitting over there that you ain't using, and then we'll use that to fix our mast and we'll be on our way. And the indigenous people of Hawaii was like, no, that's our sacred burial grounds. That's reserved for our kings, our high priests, our gods. You can't have it. Captain Cook was like, well, how about we give you some nails and hatchets for it? How about that? It's iron. And it was like, no, we told you this is sacred. You can't take it. Now they pissed off now because now you're insulting them. So Captain Cook was like, well, if you won't give it to us, we'll take it. And he ordered his men to go chop down this people's wood and take it from them. And that's exactly what his men went and did. They chopped down the wooden borders to their burial grounds, loaded the wood onto boats, and was getting ready to sail the boats back to the ship so they can use it to fix their masts. Now, it took them 19 days to fix both their ships and piss off an entire nation of people. And on February 6th, they left Kealakekua Bay. But they didn't get far, because they were met with bad weather that broke everything Cook and his men just fixed. And on February 11th, they sailed right back to Kealakekua Bay and was like, hey guys, we need more supplies. Now this ain't do nothing but piss the indigenous people of Hawaii off. How dare you come back to our home and demand from us after you've treated us with such disrespect and we were nothing but nice to you? How dare you? Now the only way Cook and his men could get from ship to shore was by using longboats. So the indigenous people of Hawaii was like, you know what? We gonna take your longboat and see how far you can get now. Because after partying with them for a month, they knew Captain Cook couldn't swim. So Captain Cook was like, I'm gonna teach them a lesson. I'm gonna kidnap their king, hold him for ransom until they give us everything we want. Now that's a tactic that this filthy European employed everywhere he went. He did that to the indigenous people of New Zealand, Australia, Tonga, Tahiti, all the Polynesian islands, and he's doing it again here in Hawaii. So Cook and some armed Marines hop on a longboat, sail to shore, and they march right up to Kalani Opu'u's house, the Ali'i Nui, the king of the Hawaiian Big Island. There they have a conversation, and Cook convinces Kalani Opu'u to come to the ship with him like he's done before. I want to show you something. Come to the ship real quick. So now Cook has Kalani Opu'u by his arm, and he's marching him towards the ship. But then Kalani Opu'u's wife, Kane Kapule, sees what's going on, and she's like, whoa, hey, where you taking him? Stop, bring him back. Hey, y'all come get him. And by the time they got to the beach, Cook and his men were surrounded. Now, Kalani Opu'u had two of his youngest sons who were following along with him, and they had already climbed into the longboats thinking that we're going to see the ship again. But it was Kane Kapule who was like, get your ass out there. He ain't taking you to the ship for fun. Get out of there. And after pleading with her husband, Kalani Opu'u is like, wait, this is a trap. So he sat down in the sand wherever he was, and they couldn't move him. Now, by this time, thousands of indigenous Hawaiians had surrounded Cook and his men, and an elderly kahuna showed up carrying a coconut, singing the mele, and he was chanting. Now, Cook and his men was like saying, man, you need to back up. You're too close. You need to back up. And the elderly kahuna, he kept coming with his coconut, chanting this mele, chanting away. So Cook and them grabbed their guns, and now they're pointing them at the crowd, talking about, back, I say, I'm just trying to kidnap your king so that you can do what I want you to do. So Cook and them grabbed Kalani Opu'u and try to pick him up off his feet, but his wife, Kane Kapule, and two chiefs stand in between them, and they're like, you not touching this one. So by this time, Kala Imano Kaho'ova walks up to Cook, and he's like, say, man, you ain't touching this one. So Cook pulls out his broadsword and smacks him on his hand like, no. That's a grown man. No. Now, Chief Kale Imano Kaho'ova grabs Cook by the collar and then pop him over the head with a sharp-toothed club, and then Cook falls back into the sand. And as he's trying to get himself up and stand upright, Nua shows up and stabs Cook real good, jug him real good one time. Now, Cook falls face first in the water, and he drowns because he can't swim and he's stabbed. And this starts a big old fight between Cook's men and thousands of Hawaiians. Now, 4 of Cook's Royal Marines were killed in the fight, as well as several Hawaiians. The rest of his men made it back to shore, and Cook's body was taken by the indigenous Hawaiians and prepared in a way for burial. Now, the indigenous Hawaiians believed that your power was in your bones. So they cut his body into pieces and baked the flesh from his bones, prepared it, and gave his bones back to Cook's men. And upon receiving his bones, baked as they were, Cook's men were like, did you eat him? Is that what you did? And the indigenous Hawaiians looked at them like, why? Is that what you do? You eat your people like that? And that's how the myth of Hawaiians are cannibals got started, because, white men were confused. So they took Captain Cook's bones, sailed away, and buried him as they do. And that's the story of how indigenous Hawaiians killed Captain Cook on Valentine's Day. Now, if I happen to mispronounce any names, words, or places, please charge it to my head, not my heart. I meant well. Hey, good morning. It wasn't just their guns that made them successful in warfare. It was their filthy European diseases and their filthy white habits. You see, when Cook first got to the island of Hawaii in 1779, there were roughly 800,000 people on the island. But after he introduced tuberculosis, gonorrhea, syphilis, and a host of other diseases, by 1879, the number was down to about 400,000 people. And by the 1900s, that number dropped to about 37,000 people. Then the United States got involved, colonized Hawaii, stole it from the indigenous people at gunpoint, and made it a state. Now let's back up real quick to the 1800s, when white people brought typhoid, yellow fever, measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough. They brought all these filthy European diseases to the island, and that's what helped to depopulate the Hawaiian Islands. The same thing happened to the indigenous peoples of Australia. When Cook first encountered them, he said, "Boy, they're the happiest people I've ever met," and then gave them tuberculosis, gonorrhea, and syphilis. Every island that Cook touched, he brought with him these venereal diseases that helped to wipe out indigenous populations. These filthy Europeans did the same thing to the indigenous peoples of North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean when they gave them blankets filled with smallpox. From 1492 to 1592, these filthy Europeans, I'm talking about Columbus and them, Cortez and them, killed about 8 million indigenous people in the lifetime of one Betty White, just one Betty White. These filthy Europeans killed 8 million indigenous people. It's not just their guns that made them successful. It was their filth. Hey, good morning. Yeah, everything's racist. Even the names of whole towns.
No way that's true. Yep, it's true. There's a little town located in Illinois just outside of Peoria called Pekin. It's located about 170 miles outside of Chicago. And it was given the name Pekin by its founders in 1820 because they firmly believed that the town was located on the exact opposite side of the world as the capital of China, Beijing, which also used to be referred to as Peking, China. Even though in reality, they're exactly on the opposite side of the world as somewhere in the Indian Ocean. And the town really went all in with this idea, including building the town theater to resemble a Chinese pagoda. They even nicknamed the city the Celestial City, just like they did in Beijing. And this is where it really starts to go sideways, because they also decided to name the mascot of their school the Pekin Chinks and Chinklets. Every year, they would literally choose a boy and a girl from the student body, make them wear mock Chinese cultural clothing, and literally represent the school mascots for the year as the Chink and Chinklet. And the residents of the town loved that branding so much that they even named the skating rink in town the Chink Rink. And Mr. Bamboo, the Chinaman, represented the school spirit. It's believed that no Asian people lived in Peking, Illinois, not that they would have had a voice or would have been listened to anyway, because even in 1974, when the National Organization of Chinese Americans in Chicago came to Peking, Illinois to tell the residents just how derogatory the word chinks was, their literal reaction was, "Oh my God, that's a derogatory term? No way!" Followed up by refusing to change the name. And when the organization met with the school newspaper's editor wrote in the school newspaper, "These guys told us the name Chinks hurts their feelings. Why do we have to keep the name when it really hurts them?" And when they gave the power of choice to the white students, not surprisingly, 1,034 of them voted to keep the name Chinks. It was such a big deal, it was published throughout the country, including in the Associated Press. And it wasn't until 1975 when several large Illinois newspapers as well as the Associated Press announced that they will not print the name Peking Chinks in their publication moving forward. And it wasn't until 1980 when a new superintendent came into the school and decided to just unilaterally decide that the Chinks was no more, and they replaced it with the Dragons. At which point the students boycotted the school, saying things like, "It's only a slur if you put racial things into it." What? I mean, even recently as 2005, an alumni stated that he's still upset that the name isn't Chinks anymore in 2005. Yeah, I mean, in 2004, couldn't let it go. But hey, what do we expect? Yeah, that's not a surprise. Not that we need proof, but yeah, good times.
Hey, good morning. You said, wait, the car that was primarily a cop vehicle nationwide for almost 2 decades comes from racist foundations? Yes. See, when racism and corruption are built into the institution, they emerge as the collective action of its entire population. Law enforcement is literally the enforcement arm of white supremacy. And corruption and racism didn't end in 47 when Ford died. It continues until today. I'll let Chelsea explain.
In 2005, Ford Motor Credit Division was sued for allowing auto dealers to discriminate against minorities by setting higher interest rates on loans for them. In 1999, they were sued for $17.5 million by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission on the basis of racial and sexual harassment. After years of toxic waste dumping at their plant in Mahwah plant in New Jersey, which closed in 1980 and is still being cleaned up and was labeled one of the messiest industrial cleanup efforts in the 27 years of the company who's cleaning it up. Maybe the fact that in 1998, State Farm, the insurance company, sued Ford for withholding information about potential fire hazards from the federal regulators. That in 2013, they were fined another $17.4 million by the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration for taking too long to recall unsafe sport utility vehicles. Or that in 1973, they were fined for falsifying tests submitted to the government on emissions testing. Or the time they were fined $7.8 million for violating CAA regulations by illegally installing a device to defeat the emission control system on 60,000 vans. Oh, and then in December of 2018, 2 of the former executives of Ford Company were found guilty of crimes against humanity. So yeah, it doesn't seem like the core values of the company have changed much in the past however many years.
Hey, good morning. I don't think we truly understand just how cartoonishly evil of a man Henry Ford was. Remember when I told you that Hitler had a picture of him on his desk? Well, he also had a life-size portrait of Henry Ford behind his desk. When he gave an interview with the Detroit News about why he had this portrait, he said, "It's because Henry Ford is my inspiration. I wish to implement the things he does in America here in Germany." And then he went and created the Volkswagen Beetle and modeled it after Ford's Model T car. This is how cartoonishly evil Henry Ford was. He even had his own personal police force that kind of functioned like his own personal mafia, his own personal Gestapo. They even threw a man over a bridge one time. This is how cartoonishly evil this man is. In March of 1932, during the Great Depression, there was a hunger march against Ford Motors, right? Where the employees planned to present a 14-point plan for better working conditions. They were met by the police, who shot at them. And the men responded by throwing sticks, stones, and clods of dirt at the police. And eventually the police retreated. And so they kept going with their march until they got right up right to the gates of Ford Motors, where they were again met with Ford's police, his cousin, the Detroit police, the Detroit Fire Department, and the Michigan police. And at that moment, Henry Ford pulled a Montgomery Burns and said, "Release the hounds." And the police opened fire on these protesters with a machine gun. They had one of them pulled up in a car, leaned out the window with a machine gun and went. 4 people were killed and more than 60 people were injured. Now this is just how cartoonishly evil the man is. He hated cities. He didn't like cities at all. And because he was one of the largest employers in Detroit, he separated 2 cities by race. Dearborn, where he was from, was for his white employees, and Inkster was for the black employees. And they called it Inkster because it was full of black people. Get this. The man went to Brazil and bought hundreds of acres of land to create his own rubber plantation. He called it Fordlandia. It failed in 1934. He created the 5-day, 40-hour work week and the weekend. Now, as cartoonishly evil as that man was, he, like Montgomery Burns, did some good things too. But you'll never believe what he did.